Can you hear me okay? Everyone hear me? Good? So thank you for that. And you know, when I hear that, I think, my God, I should get a life. So hopefully I'm starting to do that, and I am trying to get a life these days. So anyway, I've got quite an interesting topic to talk to you about, and a couple of years ago I'd never heard of this, and I was presenting some workshops in Germany, and all the students started asking me about it, and by the end of it was like 11-day marathon on nutrition I was teaching over there. And by the end of the time, I'd started working out some stuff, and I started looking into it and figured out that it's actually a much more widespread problem than people realise. And as we go through some of the symptoms and some of the places where it can actually present itself, you'll find it quite interesting, and it could be like something you can use with your clients. And I'm going to share with you some little extra things you can incorporate into the way you work, and I'm trying to make it, what I am presenting, usable within the framework of whatever kinesiology that you use, even if you don't use what I use. But you know, you're always welcome to come and do some workshops with us, because we're doing it all over Australia these days. So it's about the pyrrole, and I'll talk a little bit about methylation because it's actually involved with the pyrrole formation. But basically what you have is two structures that are important. And so on your left there, you've got the pyrrole, which is basically a ring structure with 4 carbons and a nitrogen, and a porphyrin, which is on the right, which is 4 pyrroles put into a ring. And why is this important? Well, I'll show you why. There are 2 major porphyrins that are important in the human body. They are on the left, you might recognise vitamin B12. It's called a vitamin, means we need it in our diet. And on the right, you've got the haem molecule. Well, we make millions and millions and millions of haem molecules every day. And so if our enzymes didn't work and we couldn't make haem, we would not be here. It's just that some people have a condition that the enzymes don't work as well. And we'll look at what happens in that. And me and my OCD tendencies, I like to go down to all the details, and I went on all these websites and I found out all this information about the different places where this can be important. So some of the issues with haem, I mean, obviously you've heard of hemoglobin. Globin is a protein that's added to haem, and it's what we use for transporting oxygen. But what's not also realised is haem is also a cofactor for 34 enzymes in our biochemical pathways. And in fact, it's here in the function of these 34 enzymes that people that have issues with pyrrole, or the milder forms of pyrrole condition, have a lot of problems. Because, say, in our thyroid gland, we mightn't produce a lot of haem, but we need it if we're going to make our thyroid hormones. Without it, we can't make them. So if we have low levels of haem in our thyroid, we're going to have low levels of thyroid hormones. And we might think, oh, I've got a thyroid problem. No, you've actually got a haem problem. And pyrrole is the condition that you need to address, not your thyroid hormones. So I will show you that. Some of the main things that it's important, and also with estrogen dominance and women with estrogen problems and all steroid hormones. And when you see the picture I'm going to put up there, you like take a double take when you look at how important haem is in the production of all our steroid hormones. So what happens if we don't have, or if we don't convert our pyrrole into the porphyrin, we get this thing called Mauve factor. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that. And it's called mauve because they stained it and it was mauve when they did that. And it actually binds our zinc and B6 and takes it out of our body. So commonly people with the Pyrrole condition have low levels of B6 and zinc are the problems. And even like if you talk to naturopaths or, in a lot of places around the world, they can only address it through supplementation. And since we've developed these, in my training programs, we've got more in-depth kinesiology balancing for it. We've actually found ways to address it with kinesiology. And what I'll do today is give you some ways you can work with it, if you want to check your clients for it. Okay, so anyone seen this before? Anyone recognise that? It's the Krebs cycle. Well, this is where heme production begins, believe it or not, because down there in the bottom corner you've got this molecule called succinyl coenzyme A, and here it can actually be peeled out of there and go through all this process here to make heme. Here, this in the yellow is the mitochondria and the white the cytoplasm, and then if you're in like a red blood cell, you get the globin chains added to it to get hemoglobin. But around here, in this pathway here up there, you've got porphyrobilinogen and hydroxymethylbilane. One's a porphyrin and one's a pyrrole. And this enzyme there, PB deaminase, is the culprit. It's what makes your porphyrin for you. So people with HPU, I prefer to call it HPU because the real name's really long, and people that have HPU as a genetic condition, that this enzyme doesn't work so well. It has this complex cofactor, and if you've got the wrong genetic addition of it, the cofactor falls off and so it stops working until it comes back on. So it just doesn't, it's slower in heme production. So just to give you a picture of them, on the left you've got porphyrobilinogen and on the right hydroxymethylbilane. And this here is this pathway here. So there's porphyrobilinogen, the pyrrole, and there's the porphyrin hydroxymethylbilane. Those green boxes with numbers are enzymes. They're the enzyme number from the official biochemists give them. Over here you've got your heme molecule, and what happens if this enzyme here, this one in there, doesn't work so well, you get the mauve factor instead. So basically that gives you an overview of what's going on. Okay. Now these are the two pyrroles on the right. You've got the dimethyl ethyl pyrrole, which is the mauve factor, and on the left you've got porphyrobilinogen. So this gets turned into that, and most people gloss over that, but I was actually curious, how does that happen? I mean, because you've got a methyl group, and that's an ethyl group. It says dimethyl ethyl. And then there's this whole thing with methylation pathways, and here we've got methylation appearing all of a sudden. So I found this kind of curious, and there has to be a methylation, but also ethylation has to take place. And that was really curious because I thought, oh, there must be an ethylation enzyme, but there is not. I couldn't find one. I looked everywhere. Is there an ethylation enzyme? No, but you get the ethyl group from ethanol, so don't drink alcohol, Ethionine, which is a methionine with an ethyl group. Instead, it's actually toxic. Or ethylene, which is a plant hormone that ripens fruit. And so this was curious to me because what you need for this, so that's just a picture of the methyl and the ethyl. You can see the ethyl's got 2 carbons and the methyl's got 1. Is that you've got these halide ions have to be present. Fluoride, oh yeah, that's good that we have that in our toothpaste, right? That's good. Chloride, which we have plenty of. Bromide, iodine. It's going to be tough for the, you know, in the thyroid gland. And these are all the halides. They're on this column here. They've always got a charge of -1 in the ionic form because they like to grab an electron to fill up their electron chain. So these are the things that you need to actually take place. So something that's important for people that have these issues is looking at those as well, to work with fluorine, maybe detoxify it, and toxicity pathways start coming into it, and what way you can work with toxicity. So I want to go through some of the places and show you where the heme is important, not just in our red blood cells. And in the thyroid, we've got this lovely little enzyme that adds iodine to the tyrosine in the thyroglobulin, which is the protein, and you can see the enzyme that adds that has heme as a cofactor. Okay, so we need heme in our thyroid gland to add the iodine to the tyrosine so we can have T3 and T4. So the enzyme's called thyroid peroxidase, and it has heme as a cofactor. So that's one place where you might think, oh, you've got thyroid issues, and you might test the Terry's Minor muscle test, and you're like, oh, I'm testing iodine and everything. But if you actually look at heme's the issue. And I'm going to give you, I have an indicator point, or like a Riddler point, and I'm going to show it to you towards the end so you can use it and test for heme. Steroid hormones. So this is the chart of steroid hormone biosynthesis. You know, I did tell you I'm a bit OCD, I like these things. Those red arrows point to boxes of enzymes that have heme as a cofactor. Now, they're kind of curious, so I'll show you. Over here you've got cholesterol. There's aldosterone, progesterone, cortisol, testosterone, and estradiol. Now, you can see that basically we need heme to produce all of these hormones. Okay? So I was talking to a colleague of mine in Germany, and her daughter was so severe in her HPU, she did not have a period anymore. And this is a 30-year-old woman. No menstrual period, and the problem was this: heme, not anything else. But there's one other thing that, you know, and this is where, you know, when I look at this and I think, you know, that you ladies, you really get a raw deal with this, is over here, these four little ones over here. You notice that they're on the other side of estrogen, which means they're involved with estrogen breakdown, or the, you know, detoxification of estrogen. And one thing that was curious for me when I started on this pathway in the last year or two, and I was looking at this and I stared at it for ages, and something dawned on me when I looked at this. You know, where's estradiol here? You've got these two enzymes there. That's basically phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. They're the two phases of detoxification. And then it dawned on me. Detoxification is, you know, it's not even detoxification. We think of detoxification as a process where we get rid of toxins. It's a process where we break down natural biochemicals in our body to clear them. Like, we make estrogen and testosterone, but we have to break them down. Otherwise, we'd keep making it and we'd end up full of all these hormones, and we'd all be having mental breakdowns with all the estrogen and testosterone in the room, right? So we actually have to break it down and get rid of it. And the same with vitamins. We take them in, but we have to break them down and get rid of them. So detoxification is not just toxins, it's all our natural biochemicals. And that was like, I'm like, oh, got it. So, you know, like, so when I started addressing that, you can actually use what we think of detoxification, and we think, oh yeah, it takes place in the liver. It takes place in every tissue of your body. Every single tissue of your body makes stuff, then breaks it down and clears it. And this is where I just go, you know, raw deal for the ladies that have HPU, because you see these? Estrogen is and if you look at all the other ones, except for progesterone, that we actually, again, the ladies, but guys have it because we need progesterone to make cortisol. So it's actually in our adrenals where we make cortisol, we actually have progesterone as a precursor, you know, and it keeps being made. It's the only steroid hormone that requires haem to break it down. And what happens when you have too much estrogen? You get a risk for cancer. And I'm going to show you something that, you know, when I started looking into it and started looking into, well, you know, how is estrogen broken down, you know, the actual, you know, the different pathways of breaking down estrogen. So that was like, that just blew my mind, you know. So these are what we call the Cytochrome P450s. These are, well, I found 39. They all have haem as a cofactor. They're the gene codes, so you can just, you know, you can go onto gene cards or any of these genetic places and you can look at them, or you can go to Snippedia and look at what kind of alleles you get. So, just a couple of them. This one's CYP1A1. And we actually use it, it breaks down estrogen, but it also breaks down toxins. So we have the same enzymes breaking down toxins, and they're breaking down estrogen, or they're breaking down this, or they're breaking down that. And so here's another one, CYP2D6. You can see the enzyme number, 1,14,14,1 is the same. They have the same enzyme number. Oh, they're the same enzyme. No, they're not. They have different proteins, are given the same number because they do the same thing. Okay, but they're different. And this one again, this is just the text off gene cards, which is a website. I just kind of copied a couple of them, but I went through each one of them and picked out all the ones that do toxins for when I wanted to do something with toxicity. But, you know, so sometimes you have good versions and sometimes you have slow versions, depending on your genetics, okay? So, another thing that's used for, that needs haem, is reactive oxygen. Anyone heard of that? Reactive oxygen. Anyone heard of these enzymes, catalase and peroxidase? They both have haem as a cofactor. Oof. B6. Well, B6 is kind of interesting because, you know, there's the pyridoxal phosphate or P5P, you know, yeah, you know, or there's pyridoxal, and it's interesting when you look at supplements, like which ones do they have? I like doing that. What I figured out now, the best supplements have both. You know why? Because you can't absorb P5P. There's a brush border enzyme that takes the phosphate group off, you absorb it, then it gets added back on again. So you only absorb the pyridoxal. So pyridoxal can be absorbed, but it's not activated. So good supplements give you both, but you know, once it's absorbed, we have phosphates, not an uncommon thing that we can add to it. This is kind of you can see the little groups here, the pyridoxal, over here the pyridoxal 5-phosphate, which is the active form. These enzymes just literally like go backwards and forwards. And this one here, the 31374, is a brush border enzyme, so it sits on your intestines. It'll take the phosphate group off, you absorb it, and then once it's in, this enzyme will be on the other side, it'll just put it back on. So it doesn't matter what you do, unless you're taking it IV, you have to actually absorb the B6. Interestingly enough, most B vitamins have transporters to transport them, not B6. It actually crosses the membrane through passive diffusion. So in most people, it's just really we have too much B6, we have to actually get rid of it. It just becomes the issues with if you've got the Pyrrole, it's been bound, and people that have HPU have low B6. So if you have a client with low B6 in their bloods, then you would start looking at, well, maybe there's an issue with the HPU, or, are they testing for this or this? Or maybe these enzymes aren't working properly. There's something going on in there. It's something to look at. But that really I found interesting, and I still marvel at how the human body works and how little we know. And especially as kinesiologists, we don't have this specialist training. Maybe if you're a naturopath or something, you might know that. But, I certainly didn't. And anyway, so balancing Pyrrole, and if you're nice to me and you send me an email, I'll send you this PDF I've got on the right, or you can just photograph it and copy it. But you can see I've got an indicator point there, it's down on the right. Also for haem up here, and you can literally use it as you would use a Riddler point. Okay, some of them are like zinc's Riddler point and biotin, I think, and chromium. And there's B6. So I'm not sure if there's actually a B6. So that's one I developed because I think it was just a general B one. Other things and manganese too, which is in the navel. So all of these things are important for Pyrrole balancing. So like I showed you before, say with the thyroid gland, and you've got someone with low thyroid, you might actually need to balance these, and especially the haem, with respect to however you do the thyroid balancing. So I've tried to do it in a way that you can use within your own practice, and not make it like, oh no, now you have to come and do a workshop with me so you to get the goods, So these are some of the things with the Pyrrole balancing. So now I just wanted to talk a little bit about the estrogen and come back to this, because I think it's something that's really important, and especially for women and breast cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer. So you see over here estradiol. Estradiol is the estrogen of a normal fertile female who is not pregnant. Estriol, which is here, is the pregnancy estrogen, and estrone is more dominant in postmenopausal women, but they all have the same enzymes for breaking them down. Except for estradiol has this little curious thing here. You can see there you've got, again, one-step, two-step process of breaking down phase 1 and phase 2 toxicity. That's what they are. And this one here I'll come back to is very curious, because once it gets into the gut, you can actually reactivate it if your microbiome is out, because you've got this enzyme that your microbiome produces called beta-glucuronidase. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that. And it's commonly naturopaths test for it sometimes if they're looking at your gut health. But in women, if they've got high levels of it, it reverses this, gives you estradiol back, it gets absorbed, and all of a sudden the estrogen that your body got rid of is back in the system, that it wasn't produced in the ovaries. like you would normally expect estradiol to be. So therefore, you start having high levels of estrogen, or what they call estrogen dominance. So this is my little table. Over here you've got here in the liver. The liver is generally where you are breaking down estrogen to get it out of the body. And also here I call it target tissue, which is mainly the breast, uterus and ovaries. So you can see that all of these are CYPs. I showed you those before, but they're different numbers. All got the same enzyme number, but different actual proteins. This one over here, they all add a hydroxy group, but this one over here, the 4-hydroxy, causes cell damage and reactive oxygen species and is carcinogenic. The other two are not. So all of a sudden, if you see here this one or this one, which one do you want? The 1A1 or the 1B1? 1A1. I looked at someone's genetic profile, because you can get the genetic profiles done of people and look at these, and they had a slow B1 and a fast A1. I thought, well, you're lucky, because that means that's just your risk for breast cancer is all of a sudden better. And so then you've got down here, this is called COMT. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of COMT, but that's the warrior or the warrior gene. It's a methylation enzyme, and if you've got the warrior has a slow COMT and the warrior has the fast COMT, and they're just variations. So if you've got this and a slow COMT, it means this hangs around longer. So all of a sudden your genetic profile becomes an issue. Over here in the liver, you've got all these other guys here, and they're all doing their thing and working their way, and you're not really getting any reactive oxygen cell damage. It all happens in the breast, uterus and ovaries, and therefore you get a higher risk for breast cancer, uterine cancer and ovarian cancer. So it's something that's personal for me, since my mother died from ovarian cancer, and I know, what it brings into a family when people have these issues can be very, very traumatic, So what's the difference? Well, this is estradiol, and they're numbered, it's got 18 carbons. It's just where the hydroxy group's put on. 16OH it's put there, 2OH it's put there, and the 4OH is put there. That's the only difference. If you test them, if you weighed them, they're exactly the same. You actually have to test for the structure. So if you're getting tested for it, and you can get it done, usually through a naturopath, they will test, and they send you off to probably Nutripath or whatever they're called, and they will do a test and they'll tell you which ones you have, in your thing. So the one you're looking for is the 4OH. You want that to be low. And if it isn't, then you want to address it through, whatever naturopathy, and also coming back here, looking at how you can maybe balance this one to activate this pathway rather than that pathway. And that is epigenetics, where epigenetics comes in, and the major epigenetic factor is methylation. Methylation always seems to come back. So this is so estrogen. I haven't got a lot of time left, but I've got these slides. These slides you will be able to get in the NK Institute app, or if you'd just like me to send you the PDF, email me on that email address I put up before. But we do have an app, and in there, if you go into the English NK Institute, and then there's articles, you will find all PowerPoints and conference papers I've produced that you can just look at. So these are the symptoms of estrogen dominance, which means high levels of estrogen. And males do have estrogen, so prostate problems. And you can see mild, moderate and severe. And so if you look at that, can you see yourself in there anywhere? and addressing it. And here you're going to have to be quick here if you want to copy that. This, I didn't write this, it was written by my partner's a naturopath, and she put this together for me. And so there's just some things you can do to support estrogen dominance, but also, you know, with the issues with breakdown is also with the microbiome. Like I described to you before in the microbiome, how the gut bacteria can reactivate estrogen, like finally you've got it out of the body and oh, it comes back, you know. And so, and also the risk for cancer with that CYP1B1 version of the enzyme that gives you the 4-hydroxy estradiol. So the pathogens that reactivate, there's 2 fungus and a bacteria. They're the ones that produce beta-glucuronidase. So you can work in the large intestine with those specific pathogens. And again, it comes down to gut health. I mean, it's one of the modern mantras of the 21st century, and complementary health is about gut health. And just, I want to show you something with the reactive oxygen, just to bring this back, is here, you can see this is what happens to reactive oxygen. See the catalase and peroxidase neutralise it, but first we need this superoxide dismutase. I don't know if you've heard of that. We actually have 3 versions of it. One's in the tissue, one's in the mitochondria, and one's in our blood. And this produces hydrogen peroxide, which we still have to deal with, and the catalase and peroxidase have heme as a cofactor. So they are important for the you know, like just general anti-aging. So this Pyrrole condition, you know, it can lead to problems with cancer, anti-aging, energy, you know, the thyroid problems, all these other issues too with the production and breakdown of neurotransmitters and hormones. So I think I've got a few minutes left, so if anyone's got any questions, I can try and answer them.
I've got a comment.
Yeah?
In the old days, Hugo, well, they've written books about it, porphyria was the vampire syndrome.
Yeah.
So now you sort of make sense of that, like they haven't got the heme, the blood to make the energy, so they've got to suck it out of others. Yeah, the heme. Well, it's interesting about heme, and that is, you can, like, I asked the question about supplemental heme, you know, and iron supplements, but you can get heme iron supplements. So that would be something you could look at as far as supplementation. And when I looked further into it, because I had someone tell me, no, you can't get supplemental heme. I said, well, go and drink blood, because we can absorb it the same way we absorb B12. We've got active transport molecules that will transport it in the blood, right? But you can get heme iron supplements. So that would be something, if you're looking at iron supplementation, as just the normal, you know, you've got the ferrous and the ferric iron, but there's also heme iron, could be actually quite important. So, but it's interesting your comment on the vampire thing, like wanting to suck blood or have a nice big bloody blue steak. Sorry? No other way to make it if they haven't got that heme. Yeah, well that's right. But you know, remember the enzyme, if it didn't work, we wouldn't live, because we could not transport, you know, we have millions of heme molecules in our red blood cells, you know. But what happens is that the cofactor falls off all the time. It's there, it falls off, it comes back on, it falls off. So it's just not efficient production of heme. So then you have low heme. So, but it's really more marked in these places like in the, say, in your breasts or in your thyroid gland, because we don't make a lot of heme there. In our red blood cells we make tons of it. But you know, millions of molecules of it. But in our thyroid gland we don't make so much.
So that's when the problem or the low levels really shows itself. And people with the HPU syndrome, often you would have thought they had a thyroid, or you're seeing all these other symptoms of other conditions that are just manifested because the hem's low in the tissue.
Operations on their thyroid.
They have the operations on their thyroid. Yeah. Yes.
Are you able to go back to the page you had on support?
Okay, yeah, you want that one. I could hear the groan when I left that. Yeah, and so, but honestly, if you've got issues, it's really a job for a naturopath. I'm just giving you information and helping educate you, but I would definitely, if you've got someone with these issues, if you're not a naturopath, you should be working with one. Yeah.
Can I just confirm, please, the email address?
info@nkinstitute.com. Yep. I'll just go back there. Oh, there it is. Yep. So if you want the PDF or of the PowerPoint or this, I'll email it to you, and along with all our spam.
With regards to that heme supplement.
Yeah. Heme iron.
Yeah, heme iron, sorry. Can you take too much? I mean,
Oh, look, I'm not a naturopath. You should talk to a naturopath. If you have issues, that is for a naturopath to decide. I am not qualified. I'm just giving you some information, stuff I've learnt on the way. But that's where it's important, and I'm really passionate about this. You should only do what you're trained to do. And there's too many people out there, using kinesiology and then prescribing supplements, and they're not trained in it. Fine, if you're a naturopath, go for it. Use kinesiology. I know some kinesiologists, naturopaths, and I've trained them, and they do amazing. They're booked out for 6 months. They get such good results. But Okay, thank you. I think time's up. So thank you so much, and I'm so happy to be here.